What if I told you that a book directly quoted in the Bible was intentionally erased from history, a text that was cherished by the earliest Christians, but then vanished for over 1,000 years? For almost the entire world, it was a ghost, a lost book. But in Ethiopia, it never disappeared. And this wasn't an accident. The survival of the Book of Enoch in Ethiopia is a story of faith, isolation, and a deep-seated belief that it held a divine message for all of humanity. So how did a remote African kingdom become the perfect sanctuary for this ancient text to thrive, even as it was being wiped out everywhere else? To understand why the Book of Enoch disappeared, we first need to get a handle on what it is and why it was such a big deal. The Book of Enoch, or one Enoch as scholars call it, isn't just one book. It's actually a collection of 5 different works, written by various authors between 300 BC and 100 BC. It's what's known as a pseudepigraphal text, which is a fancy way of saying it's written in the name of a famous figure from the past. In this case, Enoch, Noah's great-grandfather. In the book of Genesis, Enoch is a total mystery man. The text just says, he walked with God, and he was no more, for God took him. This short, cryptic line sparked a wildfire of curiosity. If God took him, what did he see? What secrets did he learn up in the heavens? The Book of Enoch claims to have the answers. Its authors, a group of scribes obsessed with astronomy, the problem of evil, and God's ultimate plan, saw Enoch as the perfect person to reveal heavenly secrets. The book is an apocalyptic text, which was a popular style of writing that claimed to pull back the curtain on the cosmos, the nature of good and evil, and the end of the world. And this wasn't some fringe document. During the Second Temple period, the era between the building of the Second Temple in Jerusalem and its destruction in 70 AD, the Book of Enoch was one of the most popular and influential Jewish texts around. We know this because of one of the greatest archaeological finds of the 20th century, the Dead Sea Scrolls. Among the hundreds of ancient texts found in the Qumran caves, fragments of the Book of Enoch were discovered in large numbers, rivaling the copies of some books that are now in the Old Testament. This tells us that for the people of that time, Enoch's words were considered incredibly important. The book covers a huge range of topics. It's got a detailed solar calendar, complex descriptions of the heavens, prophecies about a messianic figure called the Son of Man, and visions of the final judgment. The first Christians were also very familiar with it. The New Testament's Epistle of Jude doesn't just refer to the book. It quotes a direct prophecy from 1st Enoch and attributes it to Enoch, the 7th from Adam. This direct quote gave the text a sacred status for many early followers of Jesus, an authority that few other non-biblical works could claim. So here we have a text that was a bestseller in ancient Judaism, treasured right alongside what we now call the Bible, and was even quoted by a New Testament author. It was a foundational piece of literature that shaped how a whole generation understood angels, demons, prophecy, and the Messiah. It begs the question, if it was so respected, why did it become forbidden knowledge? What was so dangerous about it? The reason the Book of Enoch became so controversial, so divisive, lies in its most famous part, the Book of the Watchers. This section takes a very short and strange story from Genesis chapter 6 and blows it up into a cosmic horror epic. Genesis 6 just says, "The sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took as their wives any they chose. It then mentions their children were the Nephilim, who were the mighty men of old, men of renown. And that's it. The Bible moves on. The Book of Enoch, however, does not move on. It zooms in on this event and paints it as the real source of all evil and corruption on earth. According to Enoch, the sons of God weren't just any divine beings. They were a specific group of 200 angels called the Watchers. Led by an angel named Samyaza, this heavenly legion looked down from the heavens, was consumed by lust for human women, and made a pact. They descended on Mount Hermon, took human wives, and taught them forbidden knowledge. This wasn't just angels having kids. This was a complete corruption of the divine and human realms. The knowledge they shared was a catastrophe. The fallen angels taught humanity how to make swords and knives, which led to warfare. They taught the arts of cosmetics and seduction, leading to chaos and promiscuity. And worst of all, they revealed the secrets of sorcery and incantations, opening the door to demonic influence and occult practices. The book basically argues that the most destructive parts of civilization weren't invented by us, but were taught to us by rebellious angels. And then there were the children. The offspring of the Watchers and human women were the Nephilim, a race of violent, bloodthirsty giants who towered over everyone. These giants devoured all the world's resources. When the food ran out, they turned on humanity, eating people. And when that wasn't enough, they started to eat each other. The world was plunged into a nightmare of violence and sin, all because of this one angelic rebellion. This wild story gave a powerful and unsettling answer to the problem of evil. It suggested that evil wasn't just about human sin, but a cosmic contamination that had infected creation itself. In this light, Noah's flood wasn't just a punishment for bad people. It was God's desperate act to cleanse the earth of the giants and the unholy stain left by the Watchers. On top of all that, the book offers a highly detailed guide to angels and demons. It names the archangels, Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel, and describes their jobs. It also explains that the spirits of the dead Nephilim became the demons that would torment humanity until the final judgment. This level of detail about the spiritual world was fascinating, but for some, it was also a big theological problem. It presented a world with a whole hierarchy of named spiritual beings that went way beyond what was in the Torah. This was the explosive story at the heart of the Book of Enoch. It was a tale of divine rebellion, forbidden knowledge, and monstrous giants. A story that grabbed people's attention, but also clashed with the official theology being developed by both Rabbinic Judaism and, later, mainstream Christianity. It was just too wild, too detailed, and too hard to control. And as religious leaders started to nail down their official beliefs and texts, this incredible story got the Book of Enoch kicked out of the club. So, if the book was so popular, what changed? How did it go from being quoted in the New Testament to being branded as heresy and pretty much forgotten for over 1,000 years? The answer is in the long, messy process of canonization, the official decision of which books made it into the Holy Bible and which ones didn't. In the first few centuries after Jesus, there was no single official Bible. Different Christian communities had their own collections of holy books. During this time, the Book of Enoch was still highly respected. Early church fathers like Tertullian, Irenaeus, and Clement of Alexandria all referred to it and held it in high regard. Tertullian, a major Christian writer in the late 2nd and early 3rd centuries, even fought for it to be included in the canon, arguing that Jude's quote was proof it was inspired by God. But as Christianity grew across the Roman Empire, the need for everyone to be on the same page became critical. Church leaders started holding councils to settle debates and define what exactly Christians should believe. A huge part of that was creating a closed canon of Scripture, a final list of approved books. It was during this time, mostly in the 4th century, that the Book of Enoch's fate was sealed in the Western world. There were a few reasons for its rejection. First, its authorship was a problem. Even though it claimed to be written by the ancient Enoch, scholars knew it was written much later. That was a red flag for church leaders who wanted a canon based on books with clear apostolic or prophetic origins. Second, its story was becoming a headache for the official theology. The wild tale of the Watchers and the origin of demons was seen as a weird and unnecessary addition to the story in Genesis. Influential thinkers like St. Augustine argued against it, promoting a simpler theology where sin started with Adam and Eve's mistake, not a complicated drama about fallen angels. This made Enoch's story seem like a distraction. Third, there was the fact that it had already been rejected by the Jewish canon. By the 2nd century AD, Rabbinic Judaism had standardized its own scriptures and left Enoch out. Christian leaders like Jerome, who translated the Bible into Latin, argued that the Christian Old Testament should match the Hebrew Bible. Since Enoch wasn't there, he argued it didn't belong in the Christian version either. Finally, the book's apocalyptic nature and its popularity with some groups labeled as heretical made the mainstream church nervous. It revealed too much about how heaven worked, the names of angels, and the timeline of the end of days. To keep control over their doctrine and stop what they saw as dangerous speculation, church authorities started to actively suppress these kinds of texts. Councils like the Council of Laodicea in the 4th century created lists of official books that specifically left Enoch out. And just like that, a once revered text was pushed to the fringes. It was labeled heretical, apocryphal, and dangerous. Scribes stopped copying it. Theologians stopped quoting it. Over the centuries, the original Greek and Aramaic manuscripts turned to dust, and for most of the Christian and Jewish world, the Book of Enoch was lost. It faded from memory, becoming nothing more than a mysterious footnote. The erasure was so total that for nearly 1,500 years, the Western world thought the book was gone for good. But it wasn't. Before we get to the incredible story of the one place on earth where this book was never lost, if you're finding this journey into hidden history as fascinating as I do, take a second to subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's travel to the highlands of Africa to find our lost book. While the Roman Church and Rabbinic Judaism were busy erasing the Book of Enoch from history, something completely different was happening in the mountainous kingdom of Ethiopia. Here, the book wasn't just surviving. It was being cherished, copied, and woven into the very heart of their national faith. Its survival wasn't a historical accident. It was a direct result of Ethiopia's unique culture, geography, and religious journey. So, why Ethiopia? How did it become the exception? There are a few key reasons that created the perfect storm to protect this ancient text. First, it's all about timing and tradition. The story of Christianity in Ethiopia starts incredibly early. The New Testament itself, in the Book of Acts, tells of the Apostle Philip baptizing an Ethiopian eunuch, a high-ranking official for the Ethiopian queen, who then took the Christian message back home. While that was the first contact, Christianity became the state religion of the Aksumite kingdom of Ethiopia in the 4th century. Crucially, this happened before some of the big Western councils that officially kicked Enoch out of the canon. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church developed its own traditions and, most importantly, its own biblical canon, which was bigger and more inclusive than the one being finalized in Rome. They simply never got the memo to throw Enoch away, and by the time those decisions were made elsewhere, the book was already a core part of their church. The second, and maybe the most important factor, was isolation. Geographically, the Ethiopian highlands are a natural fortress, cut off from the rest of the world by vast deserts and seas. After the rise of Islam in the 7th century, Christian Ethiopia became even more isolated from the rest of Christendom. This isolation acted like a cultural and theological shield. While the churches in Rome and Byzantium were constantly arguing about theology and standardizing their texts, Ethiopia was left alone to develop on its own terms. This protected their ancient traditions from outside meddling. The pressures that led to Enoch's rejection in Europe just didn't exist in Ethiopia. The third reason is that the book became part of their identity. The Book of Enoch wasn't just another scroll on a shelf. It became a cornerstone of Ethiopian theology, art, and culture. It was translated into the ancient liturgical language of Ge'ez, and its ideas soaked into the culture. The book's detailed descriptions of archangels, for instance, heavily influenced Ethiopian art, and you can still see depictions of angels from Enoch in their churches and on prayer scrolls today. The book helped shape the Ethiopian worldview, giving answers on the nature of evil, the final judgment, and the heavens. It became a part of who they were. Finally, we have to give credit to the tireless work of Ethiopia's monasteries. For centuries, in remote monasteries perched on mountaintops, scribes took on the holy duty of copying manuscripts by hand. For them, preserving these texts was a sacred act. They painstakingly copied the Book of Enoch onto parchment, ensuring it survived for generations, long after the last copies in Greek or Aramaic had vanished everywhere else. These monastic communities were the guardians of Ethiopia's unique Christian heritage. Because of this perfect mix of early adoption, geographic isolation, deep cultural meaning, and dedicated preservation, the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church became the sole guardian of the complete Book of Enoch. They didn't just save a book. They saved a vital window into the world of early Judaism and Christianity that would have been lost to us forever. For more than 1,000 years, the Book of Enoch was a ghost in the Western world, a name without a book. That all changed in the 18th century, thanks to a Scottish explorer named James Bruce. Bruce was a larger-than-life character who traveled through Ethiopia between 1768 and 1773, determined to find the source of the Blue Nile. While he was there, he learned that the legendary Book of Enoch wasn't a myth, but a real, living part of the Ethiopian Bible. He managed to get his hands on 3 complete copies of the book, written in the ancient Ge'ez language. When he returned to Europe in 1773, he brought these manuscripts with him, and it caused an absolute sensation. For the first time in centuries, Western scholars could actually read the entire book. Bruce gave one copy to the King of France and another to the Bodleian Library at Oxford University. The first English translation finally appeared in 1821, unlocking the book's secrets for the public. The discovery was a game changer. It confirmed that the ancient texts quoted by Jude and Tertullian were real. And then, the discovery of Aramaic fragments of Enoch among the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1947 proved that the text Ethiopia had preserved was authentic and ancient, closely matching the versions that were being read at the time of Jesus. Today, the Book of Enoch continues to fascinate both scholars and the public. It gives us priceless insight into the Jewish thought that shaped the world of the New Testament. Ideas that seem to pop up out of nowhere in the New Testament, like calling the Messiah the Son of Man, or detailed ideas about resurrection and final judgment, have their roots in books like Enoch. It helps us understand the world that Jesus and his apostles lived in. In Ethiopia, the book remains a sacred part of their faith. It's not a historical relic. It's a living scripture that continues to shape their theology, art, and spiritual identity. The survival of the Book of Enoch is more than just a historical fluke. It's a testament to a church and a culture that held on to its ancient traditions, protected by mountains and faith. It's a powerful reminder that history isn't a single straight line, but a rich and messy tapestry, and sometimes the most precious threads are saved in the places we least expect. The journey of the Book of Enoch is an incredible story of survival against all odds. Here was a book that was once at the very center of Jewish and Christian thought, only to be systematically suppressed and forgotten by the rest of the world. Its controversial teachings on fallen angels and the origin of evil made it too hot to handle for the religious authorities who wanted to control the official story of faith. And yet, it was never truly lost. In the isolated highlands of Ethiopia, it found a safe harbor. Protected by the nation's early embrace of Christianity, its geographic seclusion, and the unwavering dedication of its scribes, the Book of Enoch was preserved in its complete form. Its survival wasn't an accident. It was a direct result of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church's unique history and its commitment to a tradition that was never broken. They saved a book that the rest of the world tried to erase, preserving a priceless link to our shared religious past. So, I want to turn the question over to you. Now that you've heard its history, do you think the Book of Enoch should be considered scripture? Let me know what you think in the comments below.